age of self-expression. The golden age of self-expression is a celebration. Whether we speak, whether we sing, whether we scribble our ideas on a piece of paper, whether we dance, draw, or doodle, there's a platform out there for us to share our ideas far and wide. And the best part is, we don't have to ask anyone for permission. I am pleased today to have as our guest screenwriter and director Alanna Brown, whose feature film debut, Trees of Peace, won the top jury awards at both the Santa Barbara International Film Festival and the Phoenix Film Festival. Alanna is currently writing an adaptation of Sharon Guskin's novel, The Forgetting Time, for New Line. And previously, Alanna completed a rewrite of the feature film Grave Hill for CJ Entertainment. In television, she wrote for season 1 of the Starz show Blindspotting, and is now working on her second feature film, The 29th Accident. Alanna and I are Toastmasters in Alameda Tongue Twisters, a Toastmasters club located in Alameda, California. Alanna, welcome to the golden age of self-expression.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you being here. First of all, I'd like to ask you how you're doing. I know you're really busy, but how are you feeling during this crazy time of pandemic living?
Yeah, good. I mean, good. Honestly, I can't complain too much. I know it's been a really hard time on globally on everyone, and you know, for myself personally, as a writer, it hasn't affected my work too much. And I've stayed healthy. Thankfully, I got the vaccine kind of early on, and haven't gotten sick with COVID. And my family has been safe and healthy, so I've been really grateful for that. So it's been just a mind over matter thing with regard to just pushing forward and mentally and emotionally, continuing day by day to just get through it and meditate and just look for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully there is some light at the end of the tunnel, but mindset's a lot of it. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to be part of the solution, and having a good mindset, I think, is a big deal. So that's great. That's great. Well, this show is all about self-expression. And what does self-expression mean to you?
Self-expression, to me, I would say means uncompromisingly sharing your voice with the world, or with your, whoever you choose to share it with. And that could be, with yourself, that could be journaling. That your self-expression could be, very private and personal and intimate. But expressing yourself sort of unabashedly, uncompromisingly, getting out, an inner part of yourself, your creative vision, or your, whatever is inside, and getting that out, and letting that breathe and letting that live in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. That's interesting. So do you have a personal story that led to your passion for writing?
Yeah, I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing since I was a little kid. And but I grew up in a household that was very traditional, very much like you go to college, you get your degree, you get a real job, you get, the stable, dependable thing. And I did that. And then after college, I was working, a day job, and just I felt like something was not right in my life. Like I wasn't living, even though I was alive, and I felt really a calling towards cinema, towards the cinematic arts. And I decided maybe it's acting. And so I got into an acting class and started trying acting, and writing was always in the back of my mind. I had written prose and poetry all growing up. And then in my scene study class, my teacher said, you actors all need to write like a 5-minute short film and cast yourself. So write it as a star vehicle for yourselves, and take turns holding the camera, shoot each other's short films for your reels. And my short film turned into a 28-page short story. not with, I was in it for one scene. I was in it for like 30 to 60 seconds. I was a very minor character, but the story really took hold. The story really took over. And it was really like a light bulb went off that had never gone off before. I had never considered screenwriting. It had just never occurred to me. And so really my love of writing and my love of cinema just kind of married, and I never looked back. I went on to produce and direct that short film, screened it at festivals, and then just continued on. I wrote Trees of Peace, my first feature film that you just spoke about, and I've written other things, and I've just, I've never looked back.
That's great. That's great. So it was that one assignment that opened your eyes? Yeah.
Yes, that one assignment was the change that I just needed, and I had never realized before, and then it just all clicked into place.
Right.
Yeah.
The next question is about teachers, heroes, and role models, and that teacher is probably would be considered a hero.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that teacher and other heroes and role models you might have had.
Yeah, she was a wonderful acting teacher. Just really had a great vision for how to work a scene, how to bring the truth out of actors in the scene, and just get the best out of them. So eventually becoming a writer and director, having that base, that example as a foundation for me going forward has been really valuable to watch her and see how she would work a scene and what she would ask of the actors. And it was a really great part of my early conditioning with regard to crafting characters and then directing actors on a set. And yeah, it was just really great to have her as a teacher and to have that influence. And beyond that, I would say my mom is my hero. My mom, single mom, and she taught me so many things, and she really taught me kind of not to take no for an answer. She taught me always to raise my voice if I wanted to be heard, and that there's no shame in speaking out and letting myself be heard. And she always said the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I should squeak away. So I say my mom is my hero. She's really like she's really just like an emblem of like strength and fortitude, and she's so smart and brave and hardworking, really diligent. And I think I got a lot of those qualities from her example. And because it's hard work to be a filmmaker, it's really hard work to be a screenwriter, to break into the industry, and it takes years of persistence. Right. And so I think I got that fight from her.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to ask you in different ways to describe the hard work, because I looked a little bit about what went into making the film. What led you to start the project on the Rwanda genocide?
Yeah, I was writing my day job for a very long time before I was a working screenwriter. I worked as a copywriter, blogger, like online writer. And so I was writing a journalistic piece about a woman who founded a Trade Not Aid initiative in Rwanda to help rehabilitate women survivors. And in researching her story, or researching to interview her, I started coming across others, just survival stories. I started coming across stories of people hiding in such extreme circumstances. And it was really mind-blowing to think about the will to survive, like the places people would hide in for an extended period of time, 80, 90 days, weeks at a time. There was a story of a man who hid in a suitcase for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then he would, unzip the suitcase and then go to the attic and hide in the attic for 2 weeks, and go from the attic and hide in the swamps. And people, it's just like, think about being crammed inside of a suitcase for 2 weeks. So, and then, thinking about, I felt like, the women's side of the story hadn't really been told. And especially in finding in my research that Rwanda has the highest percentage of women in government of any country in the world, I was absolutely floored by that. And I just was in such awe of this community of women, and felt like the women's story, again, had not been told. We have larger macro tellings of the genocide. Hotel Rwanda is probably the most famous one. And there are other narrative films and documentary films about it. And I just thought, there hasn't really been a story that tells the women who were in hiding, the people who were in hiding, because if you weren't a Hutu willing to kill, if you were a sympathizer or a Tutsi, then you were in hiding. And so your natural hiding place would be a very contained space. And that was the genesis of the film.
Right. And then you went to Rwanda. Can you tell us a little bit about your trip and what you learned?
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. So I went to Rwanda in 2019, pre-production, knowing that the movie was going to get made later that year, and knowing, I had done a ton of research for years, and met with survivors living in California, and just done a ton of research online and everything I could get my hands on, but I'd never been to the country. So I went in 2019 for the Week of Remembrance. They have a Remembrance Week every year at the start of April, which was when the genocide began in 1994. And so I went for a week, and it was really a very, very emotional, I would say, life-changing experience. A lot of tears, a lot of emotion. I went to as many genocide memorial sites as I could. We rented a car. I went with a very small team. My mom was there.
Oh, good.
And I brought a cinematographer just to capture everything. We rented a car and we drove all around the country, and it's a very small country, and but beautiful. Oh, it's just beautiful country. It's so clean today. There's no trash anywhere. Plastic bags are illegal. It is a stunning, stunning country. It's just green and lush, and the people there were so warm and welcoming and kind. It was unfathomable that a genocide had even happened there, because the smiles and the inner light of the people there is just really remarkable. And while I was there, I interviewed a couple of survivors and a perpetrator. I interviewed a perpetrator and a survivor side by side, who have reconciled. He had left her for dead. He had so I interviewed the two of them in her home, and he had killed her 9-month-old baby, who was in her arms, and he had cut off her arm. So her arm's severed from here down, and clubbed her in the back of the head and left her for dead. And throughout the genocide, he'd killed 14 people with a machete. So it's pretty, I don't even know the word for it, but to be sitting across from someone who would in any other circumstances, be considered a serial killer ultimately. But he it was kill or be killed, and he was forced to kill, or he would lose his own life. So it was a very traumatizing experience for him. He said he still sees the faces of the victims in his mind, that they haunt him. But what the women did in the country that was so beautiful is that they spearheaded a lot of the healing initiatives there. So the men in prison were taught forgiveness training, essentially, in prison. So when they were released, they would know how to seek forgiveness and atonement of their surviving victims. So when this man got out of prison and he saw Alice, the survivor, alive, he ran away at first because he was so ashamed and he didn't know how to face her. And then eventually he used what he had learned and approached her. He got on his knees and he asked for her forgiveness. And she took a little while to come back to him and said, yes, I will work on forgiving you and reconciling, because, while she said she still has a lot of anger and it's still very, very painful what they went through, to hold on to that anger only hurts her more at this point. It's enough. They've already taken enough. And for her to harbor that anger in her heart takes up only more space in her life, and she wants to release that. So that was why she decided to work towards reconciliation with him. And so it's an evolution, and it's a work in progress, but he was there with her. They were side by side, and At the very end of the film, they're the very last photo, if you remember, at the very end, the two of them. So I was there with them. That photo is from the interview. And then there was another woman named Jeanne, who is also in that end footage, the archival photographs. She's in the orange dress.
Right.
And I interviewed her in the church where she hid with, I think, some hundreds or maybe nearly 1,000 people who were all killed. I think she was the only survivor of that church, or maybe she and one other. And she hid under her older sister's body. Her sister had been killed, and she hid beneath her sister's body in order to survive. And she chose for me to interview her not only at the church, but in the spot where she hid under her sister's body. So where she's sitting in that photograph is the place where she was hiding, and that, enabled her to survive. And she had only been back there in the last 2 years since the genocide had happened. So she went, 23 years or something like that, not able to go back to that church. And she had finally just started to return to that church, and having the interview done at that place was a part of her healing evolution. It was a part of her facing what had happened and reconciling it within herself. And she now has 2 beautiful children. And it was a really emotional interview. It was really emotional. And but I have such admiration for those women. This spirit, the willingness to forgive is powerful.
And it's very powerful. It's very powerful. I was definitely moved by the movement toward forgiveness, healing and forgiveness. And the way you described it, not only did the perpetrator benefit from the forgiveness, but the victim giving the forgiveness benefited too, because it took away or maybe not take away all of it, but it removed a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a release.
Right.
Yeah.
A relief. It takes a lot of energy to hold on to hate. And if you can release it, everybody benefits.
It does take a lot of energy to hold on to hate. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, in my day-to-day life, polarization is a big thing to me. I look at the way people talk politics, finding common, looking for, I look for ways where people can find common ground who disagree politically.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of polarization in our country right now, and a lot of really angry talk. Is the best way to put it. Do you see parallels on what things that led up to the Rwanda genocide and what's happening in the US right now?
It's funny you asked that. That's exactly, it's one of the main reasons I wrote the film. I started writing it in 2012, and I'd say, I finished it. I think a script is always a work in progress, and continued rewriting over the years, but got it in pretty good shape by 2014. So it was a couple years of a writing process and years of research before even starting the script. But what really drew me to the story was exactly what you just asked, the parallels between the United States and Rwanda, and our history here of slavery and mistreatment of people of color. And the fact that, it's never been addressed. It's never really been dealt with. It's never, there's no reparations for descendants of slaves. There's no, legislation, anti-lynching laws are yet to be passed. It's wild to me. Like, it's the way this country has really just sort of denied what happened that was so atrocious. And so there's a gaping wound here because it's never been addressed. Clearly, you can't just slap a Band-Aid over a festering wound and expect it to go away. It's going to continue to rot. And I could see, pre-Trump era, not to get into politics too much, but pre-Trump era, which clearly brought the ugliness to the surface. You could say it ripped us apart, but I think we were already ripped apart and just didn't know it. Long pre-Trump, I started working on this project because I could just see what a slippery slope hate is, and the way, in the Jewish Holocaust and the, you know, in the Rwanda, the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, how this dehumanization of the enemy and this propagandizing of war and the way the media was used, and just to brainwash people, to radicalize people into thinking that cold-blooded murder is part of some kind of mission, mm-hmm. or higher calling. I could just, you know, that exists here in the United States. That's white supremacy. And that is very, very, very much embedded in the fabric of this country. And I could just see something like that happening here. You know, even though you think it's impossible, it would never happen here. And then only, you know, 5, 6, 7 years later, Trump is elected and there we are. And it's happening, and it's very scary. And it's not impossible that something like that could happen here. And so I just felt like Rwanda is such an example of the need to bring these wounds into the open, the need to talk about what happened. And until we're able to do that as a country, we will never heal. So that was part of why, like, even, you know, from like the opening shots of the film, the house, it you know, it has Rwandan essence, but it looks very much like it could be anywhere. The house doesn't look super Rwandan. It doesn't look super anything. And that was the point. The point was to make it feel like a very, like, oh, where are we? You know, we could be anywhere. And to draw in a sense of like universality into the story at the opening.
So the takeaway is, you know, let's say a lot of people in the United States, a lot of people in our country are afraid to meet the past head on because of the discomfort it would cause. The fact that they met it head on in Rwanda and owned it, that led to the healing. And maybe if we owned our past, that could lead to some healing. That could lead to more positive than negative.
I think that's definitely a part of it. Yeah. A big part, a huge part of it. And there's more to it than that, but that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. So as far as self-expression goes, there's a lot of people that have a lot of ideas. You know, they want to express themselves. They don't know if they can find their voice. They don't know if they'll be heard, or if people will understand what they are trying to say. What would you tell somebody that feels they have something to say, but they're afraid to say it?
I would say, you never know what tomorrow brings. Today is all we have. And if you have something to say, you better say it now. And don't be afraid, because what is there to lose? You know, I think we're so concerned about other people's opinions, but other people's opinions don't really matter. So if you have a burning story inside you or something you feel like you need to share, your voice is worthy. You're worthy of being heard, and say what's on your mind. That's what I would say. Yeah. Don't wait till tomorrow.
Yeah. Don't wait till tomorrow. So,
yeah.
Well, great. You've got a lot going on, upcoming projects and things like that. What's next on your bucket list? What do you want to do next?
Next is directing my next feature film. So that is in progress. That is, I think you mentioned it also in introducing me, a project called The 29th Accident, which is quite different from Trees of Peace. It's a love story.
Oh.
It's a magical realism love story. There's no political leanings or any, you know, not really a social impact kind of a film. It's really just about, you know, I still think it's important. It's about love and believing in love and the power of love. So yeah, so that's what's next. And so I'm hoping to get that off the ground, but as an independent filmmaker, it's always hard to get things made. So I'm expecting the battle continues with this next one.
Great.
But yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Is there anything you want to do for fun that you haven't been able to do during the pandemic?
Travel.
Travel.
I'm a traveler. I love traveling. I used to do a big trip once every 2 years. Me and my partner would travel every year, at least, a 1 or 2 week vacation, but we would do like a big, like month-long backpacking trip every couple of years. Yeah. And so we've been missing that. So that's been a bummer not getting to do our big trip. But hopefully travel will hopefully return soon and go back to some sense of normalcy.
I hope so. I hope that comes sooner rather than later. So,
yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you for joining me today on
Of course.
the show. I really appreciate it. And you've got a great project going. Could you tell me a little bit more about Trees of Peace and what people can look for when the film comes out?
Sure. Yeah. We don't have a distribution deal yet. We're in talks with a distributor, hopefully closing the deal very soon.
Good.
And thank you. These things just it takes so long to get a movie made. It takes so long to get it sold, distributed. The process is like years long. So hopefully it will be out in 2022. Early 2022. I mean, it will be out, but hopefully on the sooner end rather than the later end. And it should be on all the transactional VOD channels like, Amazon Prime and iTunes and all those places. And then it will be hopefully on a streamer as well. There's one that wants the film that's interested. I can't say too much, but so it will be on a streamer as well. And so you can look for it next year. In the meantime, our next film festival, we just screened at the Phoenix Film Festival, and the next one is the American Black Film Festival, which is held in Miami normally, but in COVID times, it's going to be virtual. So it'll be the film will be available online to watch virtually during the festival. I think for like 7 to 10 days of the festival, and that's early November. So I want to say November like 5th through 12th or something like that. But my Instagram at A Brown Girl Films is where I post everything. So I'll be updating about the film and where to watch it on my Instagram.
Great. I will put that in the show notes. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
But,
perfect.
Anyway, thanks again for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you.
To everyone who listened, we appreciate you. Well, we appreciate you listening and watching. This has been a lot of fun interviewing Alanna today, and you can find out more about what we do. Our website is productivediscourse.home.blog. It gives great information about our activities and how you can contact me if you'd like me to speak at your service club, community organization, religious group, or Toastmasters Club. We'll be back again next week. We're going to do another episode of the golden age of self-expression. But in the meantime, please like, share, comment, subscribe so this message can go far and wide, and we'll find that shining needle of common ground in that haystack of fear.